You will die in prison.
Why? This is
This court sentences you to 200 years in prison for the cold-blooded murder of your own daughter. Court is adjourned.
No, she was my baby. I didn't mean to.
Let's go.
No.
She sat motionless at the defense table as the judge spoke. "You'll die in prison," he said, the final words she would hear before the gavel fell. The woman before him wasn't a stranger to her victim. She was her mother. The courtroom fell silent. Just 2 years earlier, she'd been posting photos of her little girl online. Birthdays, cupcakes, bedtime smiles. To everyone who saw them, it looked like love. But behind closed doors, that image had already begun to crack. And when the truth finally emerged, it revealed something no one wanted to believe, that the woman who should have protected her child had become the reason she was gone. This is the story of a mother's descent, a daughter's final hours, and the sentence that shook an entire community to its core. The morning of April 17th arrived with the kind of stillness that settles over suburban neighborhoods on weekdays after the school buses have left and the commuters have driven away. Maple Ridge was that kind of place. Quiet, orderly, the kind of street where people knew their neighbors' names, but rarely their secrets. At 8:43 a.m., the 911 dispatch center in Riverside County received a call from 2847 Oakmont Drive. The voice on the line was female. Calm. Almost too calm. "My daughter isn't breathing." The dispatcher's fingers moved across the keyboard. "How old is your daughter?" 5. "She's 5 years old." "Is she conscious?" "No. She's cold." "Ma'am, have you started CPR?" A pause. "I don't think it will help." "Ma'am, I need you to start chest compressions now. I'll walk you through it. She's been like this for a while." The dispatcher's tone shifted. "How long is a while?" "I don't know. I just found her. Paramedics are on the way. Stay on the line with me." The first responders arrived within 7 minutes. The front door stood open. Inside, the house was neat, almost pristine. The living room looked like a furniture catalog. White sofa, glass coffee table, decorative pillows arranged with precision. Upstairs, in a bedroom painted soft lavender, they found her. Emma Grace Sullivan, 5 years old. She lay in her bed, tucked beneath a floral comforter, her small hands positioned carefully at her sides. Her skin had the pale, waxy quality that comes when death is not recent. Paramedic David Chun checked for vitals he knew he wouldn't find. No pulse, no respiration. Body temperature indicated she'd been dead for hours. In the doorway stood the mother. Her name was Rachel Sullivan, 32 years old. She wore yoga pants and an oversized sweater. Her hair was pulled back. Her face showed no tears, no hysteria. Just a distant, hollow expression that made Chen's skin prickle. "When did you last see her alive?" he asked. "Last night. Before bed. Around 8 o'clock. "And you found her this morning?" "Yes. I came to wake her for school." Chen looked back at the small body in the bed. Something felt wrong. The staging of it. The unnatural stillness of the scene. "We need to call the police," he told his partner. By 9:15 a.m., the house had transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the property. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, whispering, speculating. Detective Marcus Webb arrived with his partner, Detective Angela Reyes. They found Rachel sitting on the front steps, staring at nothing. "Mrs. Sullivan?" Webb approached slowly. "I'm Detective Webb. I need to ask you some questions." She looked up. Her eyes were dry. "Can you walk me through what happened this morning?" Rachel's voice remained flat. "I woke up at 7. Made coffee. Around 8:30, I went upstairs to wake Emma for school. She wouldn't wake up. I called 911. "Did you touch her?" I shook her shoulder. Gently. Nothing else. "No." "Did she seem sick last night? Was she complaining about anything?" "She was fine. We had dinner together. Mac and cheese. She took a bath. I read her a story. She went to sleep." "What story?" Rachel blinked. What story did you read her?" I don't remember." Detective Reyes was inside, examining Emma's bedroom with the medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Nguyen. The room was immaculate. Toys organized in bins. Books alphabetized on a shelf. The bed showed no signs of struggle. But Dr. Nguyen noticed something else. "See these?" She indicated faint discoloration on Emma's upper arms. "Bruising. Consistent with grip marks." "How old?" "Recent. Within the last 24 to 48 hours. Could they be from the mother trying to wake her?" "No. The pattern suggests restraint, not resuscitation." Downstairs, They found the kitchen spotless. Dishes put away. Counters wiped clean. But in the trash can, beneath a layer of paper towels, Reyes found a child's pillowcase. It was damp. The neighbors, when questioned, painted a complicated picture. Rachel was always so put together, said Margaret Shin from next door. You'd see her gardening, walking Emma to the park. She seemed like a wonderful mother. Did you ever hear anything unusual from the house? Margaret hesitated. Sometimes I'd hear yelling, but I thought it was just normal parent-child stuff. Kids can be difficult. Did you ever see Emma with injuries? Once, maybe 2 months ago, Emma had a bruise on her cheek. Rachel said she'd fallen off the swing set. Another neighbor, James Tucker, remembered something else. I saw Rachel a few nights ago, sitting in her car in the driveway. It was late, past midnight. She was just sitting there, engine off, staring at the house. Did you ask if she was okay? I figured it wasn't my business. By noon, the preliminary findings began to coalesce into something darker. Emma's time of death was estimated between midnight and 3 a.m., hours before Rachel claimed to have discovered her. There were no signs of natural causes, no underlying medical conditions that would explain sudden death. The bruising suggested force. The staging suggested concealment. And when detectives examined Rachel's phone, they found search queries that made their blood run cold. Searches conducted at 11:47 p.m. the night before. How long does it take to suffocate? Painless ways children die and sleep. Do suffocated children leave marks? Can police tell time of death exactly? All deleted, but recovered through forensic analysis. Detective Webb returned to Rachel, who was now sitting in an interview room at the station. She'd agreed to come voluntarily. She hadn't asked for a lawyer. Mrs. Sullivan, we need to talk about Emma. I want to know what happened to her. So do we. That's why I need you to be completely honest with me. Rachel nodded. When we examine your phone, what are we going to find? Her expression didn't change. I don't know what you mean. Search history. Deleted messages. Are we going to find anything that might help us understand what happened? I don't think so. You don't think so, or you know so? Silence. Mrs. Sullivan, your daughter has been dead for several hours. You were alone with her in the house. We have evidence that suggests this wasn't natural. If you know something, now is the time to tell me. Rachel looked directly at him for the first time. I love my daughter. I'm sure you did. Then why are you treating me like I hurt her? Because the evidence suggests someone did. And right now, you're the only person who was there. Rachel stood. I think I need a lawyer. By the time the sun set, one question consumed everyone involved. What kind of mother calls 911 after the damage is already done? The autopsy confirmed what Detective Webb had suspected. Emma Grace Sullivan died of asphyxiation. Specifically, smothering. Dr. Nguyen found petechial hemorrhages in the eyes, tiny burst blood vessels consistent with suffocation. There were fibers in her airway matching the pillowcase found in the kitchen trash. Time of death, between midnight and 2 a.m. Cause of death, homicide. The investigation intensified. Detectives obtained a warrant to search the house more thoroughly. What they discovered painted a portrait of a life carefully curated for public consumption, but rotting underneath. Rachel's social media accounts showed years of picture-perfect moments. Emma blowing out birthday candles. Emma at the beach. Emma holding a kitten at a petting zoo. Every photo was captioned with expressions of maternal devotion. My whole world. Being a mom is the greatest blessing. I'd do anything for this little angel. But the photos told another story when examined closely. In many of them, Emma's smile didn't reach her eyes. Her posture was stiff. And in several images from the past 6 months, you could see the edge of a bruise if you looked carefully enough. The digital evidence expanded. Text messages between Rachel and her ex-husband, David Sullivan, revealed escalating tension. They'd divorced 3 years earlier. The split had been contentious. Custody battles, financial disputes, accusations that never quite rose to the level of legal intervention. One message, sent by Rachel 2 months before Emma's death, read, "You'll regret walking away from us." David's response, "I walked away from you, not her. Stop using Emma as a weapon." Rachel, "She's not a weapon. She's proof of what you destroyed." The investigators tracked down David Sullivan in Phoenix, where he'd relocated after the divorce. He arrived back in Riverside within 24 hours of learning about his daughter's death. Detective Reyes interviewed him in a room adjacent to where they'd questioned Rachel. David was 35, a software engineer, remarried with a young son. When told about Emma's death, he broke. I tried, he said through tears. I tried to get full custody, but the court said there wasn't enough evidence. They said kids bruise. They said Rachel's explanations were reasonable. Tell me about Rachel. We met in college. She was intense, controlling. I thought it was just her being organized. But after Emma was born, it got worse. Everything had to be perfect. The house, our appearance, Emma's behavior. If things didn't go the way Rachel planned, she'd spiral. Did she hurt Emma? I suspected. I saw bruises. Emma would flinch sometimes when Rachel raised her voice. But Emma was too young to articulate what was happening. And Rachel was good at explaining things away. Why did you leave? David's voice cracked. Because I couldn't save Emma while trying to save myself. Rachel made it clear that if I fought for custody, she'd destroy me. She'd lie. She'd manipulate. And I believed her. So I left, thinking that maybe with distance, with therapy, things would improve. Did they? I called Emma every week. Rachel would put her on speakerphone and stand there listening. Emma always said she was fine, but I could hear it in her voice. She wasn't fine. The detectives pulled medical records. Emergency room visits. 3 times in the past 2 years. Once for a fractured wrist, Rachel said Emma fell off a slide. Once for a concussion, Rachel said Emma ran into a door. Once for burns on her hand, Rachel said Emma touched the stove. Each time, the attending physician noted the injuries were consistent with the explanations provided. Each time, a hospital social worker did a brief evaluation and found no immediate cause for concern. The system had checked the boxes, but it hadn't looked deeper. Family members told similar stories. Rachel's mother, Patricia, lived 2 hours away. She'd been estranged from Rachel for over a year. She cut me off, Patricia explained to detectives. I suggested she needed help. That raising Emma alone was taking a toll. She accused me of calling her a bad mother. Told me I wasn't welcome anymore. Did you think Emma was in danger? I thought Rachel was struggling. But danger? I didn't want to believe it. She's my daughter. Rachel's younger sister, Beth, had also been pushed away. Rachel couldn't handle anyone questioning her, Beth said. Everything had to look perfect. She posted all those photos online because she needed people to see her as this amazing mom. But behind the scenes, she resented Emma. She once told me Emma ruined her life. That if she hadn't gotten pregnant, she could have been something more. More than what? More than just a mother. The forensic team examined Rachel's computer. Beyond the search history, they found a digital journal. Entries dating back 18 months. The early entries were benign. Complaints about exhaustion. Frustrations with Emma's behavior. But the tone shifted. August 10th, she won't stop crying. No matter what I do. She wants her father. She doesn't understand that he abandoned us. October 3rd, people keep telling me how lucky I am. How beautiful she is. They don't see what I see. They don't hear her at night. December 22nd, sometimes I think about what my life would be like if she wasn't here. I could start over. Be free. February 8th, she looks at me like she's judging me. A 5-year-old. Judging me. March 30th, I can't keep doing this. She's better off not growing up with me. Better off not becoming me. April 15th, I know what I have to do. The final entry was written at 10:32 p.m. on April 16th, less than 2 hours before Emma died. It's almost over. Detective Webb and Reyes sat in the conference room. Evidence spread across the table. Photos, transcripts, timeline reconstructions. She planned it, Webb said. The searches confirmed premeditation, Reyes agreed. But why? Mental breakdown? Resentment? Control? Maybe all of it. They reviewed the timeline one more time. April 16th, 6 p.m., Rachel picks Emma up from after-school care. Surveillance footage shows both walking to the car. Emma is holding Rachel's hand. 6:30 p.m., they arrive home. Neighbor sees them go inside. 7:15 p.m., Rachel posts a photo on social media. Emma eating dinner, smiling. Caption, dinner with my favorite person. 8 p.m., Rachel's phone shows internet activity. She's browsing parenting forums. 9:30 p.m., phone activity increases. Multiple searches about suffocation. 11 p.m., last social media activity. Rachel comments on a friend's post. Tomorrow is a new day. 11:47 p.m., the fatal searches. Estimated time of murder, between midnight and 2 a.m. 8:43 a.m., 911 call. She waited, Reyes said quietly. She killed her daughter, Then she waited 8 hours before calling for help. She cleaned up. She staged the scene. She rehearsed what she'd say. This wasn't a moment of rage, Webb concluded. This was calculated. The public reaction was swift and visceral. News outlets picked up the story. Mother accused of suffocating 5-year-old daughter. Social media exploded. People dug through Rachel's online presence, dissecting every photo, every caption, looking for signs they'd missed. Some expressed horror. Others claimed they'd always sensed something off. A few defended Rachel, suggesting postpartum psychosis or undiagnosed mental illness. But the evidence was damning. Rachel was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. She posted no bail. She gave no interviews. Her court-appointed attorney, Michael Torres, issued a brief statement. My client maintains her innocence and looks forward to her day in court. But behind closed doors, Torres knew what he was facing. The evidence was overwhelming. The forensics were clear. The digital trail was undeniable. The only question left was why, and whether understanding why would matter when justice came calling. To understand how Rachel Sullivan came to smother her own child, you have to rewind past that April night, past the marriage that crumbled, past the pregnancy that changed everything. You have to go back to the beginning. Rachel and Harper grew up in a household where love was conditional. Her parents were not cruel, but they were exacting. Good grades earned praise. Mistakes earned silence. Rachel learned early that value came from achievement, from being seen as exceptional. She excelled in school, made honor roll, earned a scholarship to a respected university. Her parents displayed her achievements like trophies. But when she struggled, when she failed a test, or didn't make the lead in the school play, they offered no comfort, only disappointment. You're better than this, her mother would say. Don't waste your potential. Rachel internalized the message. You are only as good as your performance. She met David Sullivan in her junior year of college. He was steady, reliable, the kind of man who showed up when he said he would. They dated for 2 years, got married the summer after graduation. For a while, the life Rachel had constructed looked perfect from the outside. She landed a job at a marketing firm. David worked in tech. They bought a small house, posted photos of renovations and dinner parties. Rachel curated their life with the same precision her mother had once demanded of her. Then she got pregnant. It wasn't planned. Rachel was 27, still building her career. She wasn't ready, but David was thrilled. And Rachel convinced herself that motherhood would be another achievement to master. Emma was born on a rainy October evening. Rachel remembered holding her daughter for the first time and feeling nothing. Not the overwhelming love other mothers described. Not the instant bond. Just exhaustion and fear. She didn't tell anyone. She smiled in the hospital photos. She accepted congratulations. She went home and tried to become the mother everyone expected. But the disconnect remained. Emma cried constantly. Rachel felt trapped. The marketing firm had offered limited maternity leave. When Rachel returned to work, her performance slipped. She couldn't focus. She resented the sleepless nights and the constant demands. David tried to help, but his help felt like criticism. When he suggested Rachel might be experiencing postpartum depression, she shut down. I'm fine, she insisted. I'm just tired. But she wasn't fine. Rachel began to see Emma not as a person, but as evidence of her own failure. She'd been excellent at everything before motherhood. Now she couldn't even calm her own child. The resentment grew slowly. A seed that took root in exhaustion and watered itself with isolation. Rachel stopped seeing friends. Stopped pursuing hobbies. Her world narrowed to the demands of a child she hadn't wanted and a marriage that was straining under the weight of her anger. When Emma was 2, David suggested couples therapy. Rachel refused. Therapy meant admitting imperfection. It meant letting someone see beneath the surface she'd constructed. Instead, she threw herself into creating the appearance of perfection. She started a mommy blog, posted photos of Emma in matching outfits, wrote captions about the joys of motherhood. The online validation became a drug. Likes and comments from strangers who saw only what Rachel wanted them to see. But at home, the cracks widened. Emma was a normal, energetic toddler. She made messes. She had tantrums. She needed constant attention. Rachel's patience eroded. The first time Rachel hit Emma, the child was 3 years old. Emma had spilled juice on the carpet. Rachel, exhausted and overwhelmed, slapped her across the face. Emma cried. Rachel felt horror and relief in equal measure. horror at what she'd done, relief at finally releasing the pressure that had been building inside her. She apologized, promised it would never happen again. But it did. David noticed the change, the tension, the way Emma sometimes flinched around Rachel. He confronted her. "Are you hurting our daughter?" "Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Emma has bruises. She's clumsy. She falls. She's 3. Rachel, please. If you're struggling, we can get help." "I don't need help. What I need is for you to trust me." But David couldn't trust what he was seeing. He documented the bruises, talked to lawyers, filed for divorce. The custody battle was brutal. Rachel hired an expensive attorney. She weaponized the appearance she'd so carefully crafted. She showed the judge her social media, her glowing reviews from other parents, letters from friends who swore Rachel was devoted. David had documentation, but he didn't have proof. And the system, overwhelmed and cautious, sided with the mother. Joint custody was granted, but Emma's primary residence would be with Rachel. David moved to Phoenix 6 months later. He called. He sent money. But he was 3 states away, and Emma was alone with Rachel. After the divorce, Rachel's mental state deteriorated. She quit her job, claimed she wanted to focus on Emma full-time. But in reality, maintaining the performance had become too exhausting. She stayed home, isolated. The house remained spotless, but it was no longer a home. It was a stage where Rachel played the role of loving mother whenever someone was watching. When they were alone, the mask slipped. She yelled at Emma for minor infractions, sent her to her room for hours, withheld food as punishment. The physical abuse escalated. A push, a grip that left marks, a punishment that crossed the line into cruelty. Emma learned to be quiet, to make herself small, to anticipate Rachel's moods and adjust accordingly. At school, teachers noticed Emma was withdrawn. But when they asked if everything was okay at home, Emma nodded. She'd learned that telling the truth made things worse. Rachel's journal entries from this period reveal a woman losing her grip on reality. She wrote about Emma as if the child were an adversary, a constant source of judgment and disappointment. She expressed fantasies about being free, about starting over. She researched giving Emma up for adoption. But that meant admitting failure publicly. It meant people knowing she couldn't handle motherhood. The narcissistic injury was too great. So Rachel began to consider alternatives. She researched ways children died accidentally. SIDS, drowning, suffocation. She told herself she was just curious, just processing dark thoughts that would pass. But the thoughts didn't pass. They crystallized into intent. On April 16th, Rachel woke up with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. She would end it. Not her own life, but Emma's. She would be free. And she would craft a narrative where she remained the victim, the devoted mother whose child tragically passed away. She went through the motions of the day, picked Emma up from school, made dinner, posted a photo. She put Emma to bed at 8 p.m., kissed her forehead, turned out the light. Then she sat downstairs and waited. She searched the internet one final time, confirming, planning, making sure. At midnight, she climbed the stairs. Emma was asleep, her small chest rising and falling in the dim glow of the nightlight, shaped like a unicorn. Rachel stood in the doorway. Later, she would tell the psychiatrist that in that moment, she felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, mechanical certainty. She removed the pillowcase from Emma's pillow. She approached the bed. What happened next took 3 minutes, maybe 4. Emma woke, struggled. Her small hands pushed against Rachel's arms. But a 5-year-old's strength is no match for an adult's. The house fell silent long before dawn. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed. Emma's body was still. Rachel placed the pillow back, positioned Emma's hands, pulled the comforter up to her chin. She went downstairs, put the pillowcase in the trash, cleaned the bathroom, made coffee, waited for morning. When enough time had passed, she called 911. It wasn't hate that guided her hand. It was the unbearable belief that she owned her daughter's life and death. The trial of Rachel Sullivan began on a cold October morning, 18 months after Emma's death. The courthouse in Riverside was packed. Media filled the front rows. Emma's father sat with his new family, his face a mask of grief and rage. Rachel's mother attended alone, her expression unreadable. Rachel entered wearing a gray suit. Her hair was shorter than in the photos from before. Her face showed the weight she'd lost in jail. She moved like a ghost, pale and insubstantial. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Karen Chun, a veteran prosecutor known for her methodical approach to difficult cases. In her opening statement, Chen addressed the jury with controlled intensity. Over the next several weeks, you will hear evidence that will disturb you. You will see photographs of a beautiful little girl whose life was stolen by the one person who should have protected her. The defense will ask you to consider mental illness, circumstance, pressure. But I ask you to focus on one simple fact. Rachel Sullivan held a pillow over her 5-year-old daughter's face until she stopped breathing. She planned it. She executed it. She tried to cover it up. And that, by any definition, is murder. The defense attorney, Michael Torres, offered a different framework. Rachel Sullivan is guilty, he began, surprising the courtroom. Guilty of being a mother who crumbled under the weight of mental illness. Guilty of not seeking help when she needed it. But guilty of cold-blooded murder? No. What happened to Emma Sullivan was a tragedy born from untreated depression, untreated psychosis, and a society that failed to see the warning signs. Rachel needs treatment, not a life sentence. She needs acknowledgement that what she did came from a broken mind, not a broken heart. The trial proceeded with clinical precision. The medical examiner testified about the cause of death, showed autopsy photos that made several jurors look away, explained the mechanics of suffocation with detached professionalism. Forensic experts presented the digital evidence, the search history, the deleted journal entries, the timeline that demolished any possibility of accident. Detective Webb walked the jury through the investigation, the inconsistencies in Rachel's story, the staged crime scene, the hours between death and the 911 call. David Sullivan took the stand. He spoke about his marriage, the deterioration he'd witnessed, the bruises he'd documented, the custody battle he'd lost. I knew she was hurting Emma, he said, voice breaking. But I couldn't prove it, and I couldn't take her away. I've lived with that guilt every day since Emma died. I should have done more. Mr. Sullivan, Chun asked gently, in your opinion, was your ex-wife capable of murder? Torres objected. Speculation. I'll rephrase. Did you ever fear for Emma's life when she was with her mother? David looked directly at Rachel. Yes, I was terrified. Rachel showed no reaction. The prosecution called Dr. Patricia Nguyen, who had conducted the autopsy. She testified that Emma would have been conscious for at least the first minute of suffocation. She would have struggled. She would have been aware. So Emma knew what was happening. Chen asked. Yes, she would have known. The courtroom fell silent. The defense called their own experts. Dr. Stephen Marks, a psychiatrist, testified that Rachel met diagnostic criteria for major depressive disorder with psychotic features. He explained that in rare cases, untreated mental illness can lead to delusional thinking. Mrs. Sullivan believed, incorrectly, that Emma would be better off dead than raised by her. This is consistent with what's called altruistic filicide, a mother who kills her child out of a delusional belief that death is preferable to living. So she wasn't thinking rationally? Torres asked. In her mind, she was saving Emma from a worse fate. On cross-examination, Chun was relentless. Dr. Marks, you testified that Mrs. Sullivan was psychotic. But she managed to clean up the crime scene, didn't she? Yes. She managed to call 911 and present a coherent story, correct? Yes. She managed to maintain a social media presence right up until the murder, posting photos and captions that showed clear awareness of how others perceived her. Yes, but... And she conducted internet searches about how to avoid detection, didn't she? She did. Does that sound like someone who didn't understand what she was doing? Dr. Marks hesitated. Mental illness is complicated. She could understand some things while being irrational about others. Or, Chen said, she could be a woman who killed her child deliberately and tried to get away with it. The testimony that carried the most weight came from Emma's kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Linda Morrison. She described Emma as a bright, sweet child who loved drawing and stories. She also described a child who seemed increasingly withdrawn in the months before her death. I called Rachel several times. Mrs. Morrison testified, tears in her eyes. I was concerned about bruises I saw, about how Emma flinched when I touched her shoulder. Rachel always had an explanation, and I wanted to believe her. God help me, I wanted to believe her. Did Emma ever say anything about her home life? Chen asked. Once. About 2 weeks before she died. We were reading a story about a girl who runs away. I asked Emma if she'd ever thought about running away. She looked at me with these big brown eyes and said, I would, but I don't think my mom would let me live if I tried. What did you think she meant? I thought she meant her mother would be upset. I didn't think she meant it literally. The prosecution rested after 2 weeks. The defense called Rachel to the stand. It was a calculated risk, but Torres believed the jury needed to see her as human. Broken, but human. Rachel spoke quietly. She described her childhood, her marriage, the postpartum depression she'd never treated, the isolation, the resentment that grew into something darker. Did you love Emma? Torres asked. I thought I did. I wanted to. But somewhere along the way, I lost the ability to feel anything. When you went into her room that night, what were you thinking? I was thinking she deserved better, that she'd be free from me, that I'd be free from failing her. Did you understand you were killing her? Rachel's voice was barely audible. Yes. Do you regret it? For the first time, emotion crossed Rachel's face. Every second of every day. On cross-examination, Chin approached slowly. Mrs. Sullivan, you said Emma deserved better. Better than what? Better than me as a mother. But you were the one making her life miserable, weren't you? I suppose. So instead of removing yourself from the situation, through adoption, through asking for help, you removed her. I wasn't thinking clearly. But you were thinking clearly enough to search for ways to avoid detection. You were thinking clearly enough to stage the scene. You were thinking clearly enough to wait 8 hours before calling for help. Rachel had no answer. Mrs. Sullivan, you've testified that you're on medication now in jail, that you're in therapy, that you understand what you did was wrong. Yes. So you're capable of insight, of understanding consequences. Now, yes. Why not then? Rachel looked down. I don't know. The jury deliberated for 12 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. The judge asked for the verdict. On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. No gasps, no outbursts, just a heavy, inevitable silence. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. When that day came, both sides presented their arguments. The prosecution asked for life without the possibility of parole. Chun argued that Rachel had planned and executed the murder of a helpless child, that she'd shown no mercy, that she deserved none. The defense pleaded for life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Torres presented letters from mental health professionals, evidence of Rachel's progress in treatment, a statement from Rachel herself expressing remorse. Judge Harold Brennan had presided over countless cases in his 30 years on the bench. This was one he would never forget. He looked at Rachel, who stood before him, hands folded. Rachel Sullivan, he began. You were entrusted with the most sacred responsibility a person can have, the care and protection of a child. And you violated that trust in the most fundamental way. You ended an innocent life, not in a moment of passion, not in self-defense, but through a calculated act of violence against someone who depended on you for everything. He paused. The court has considered your mental health history, your expressions of remorse. But the court must also consider that Emma Sullivan had a future. She had dreams. She had the right to grow up, to experience life, to become whoever she was meant to be. You took all of that from her. Another pause. Longer this time. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The words hung in the air. You'll die in prison, Mrs. Sullivan, just as your daughter died at your hands. For the first time since the trial began, Rachel cried. Not sobs, just silent tears running down her hollow cheeks. Outside the courthouse, David Sullivan read a brief statement to the press. Emma was joy itself. She loved butterflies and strawberries and bedtime stories. She deserved to grow up. She deserved a mother who loved her. Today's sentence doesn't bring her back, but it ensures that the person who took her from us will never harm another child. That's all the justice we can ask for. The crowd dispersed slowly, some satisfied, some empty, all haunted by what they'd witnessed. In that moment, justice felt less like balance and more like an admission of collective failure. Rachel Sullivan is 34 now. She lives in a cell in the Central California Women's Facility. She attends therapy twice a week. She works in the prison library. She will never leave. Emma would have been 7, then 8, then 10. The years march forward without her. David Sullivan started a foundation in Emma's name. It provides resources for early intervention in cases of suspected child abuse. It trains teachers and pediatricians to recognize signs that go beyond the obvious, to ask harder questions, to push past perfect appearances. We can't bring Emma back, David said at the foundation's launch. But we can honor her by making sure other children don't slip through the cracks the way she did. The foundation has helped identify and remove 17 children from dangerous situations in its first 2 years. Rachel's mother, Patricia, visits once a month. She sits across from her daughter in the visiting room, separated by plexiglass, and they talk about nothing important. The weather, books, anything except Emma. I should have known, Patricia told a reporter who tracked her down. The signs were there. Rachel's need for control, her inability to ask for help. But I wanted to believe she was fine. That's what we do, isn't we? We believe what's easier than the truth. The true crime community dissected the case endlessly. Podcasts, YouTube videos, Reddit threads analyzing every detail. Some portrayed Rachel as a monster. Others argued she was a victim of untreated mental illness. A few suggested the system failed both mother and child. All of them were partly right. Dr. Helen Cartwright, who had consulted on several filicide cases, wrote an article about the Sullivan case for a psychiatric journal. Society wants maternal killers to be monsters, she wrote. Because if they're monsters, they're other. They're not like us. But the uncomfortable truth is that Rachel Sullivan was a woman who should have been helped long before she became a killer. The signs of her deterioration were visible for years. We saw them. We looked away. The article sparked debate among mental health professionals about the intersection of mental illness and criminal responsibility, about how to balance compassion with accountability, about whether punishment serves any purpose when the perpetrator is already broken. There are no easy answers. In prison, Rachel keeps a photo of Emma on the small shelf in her cell. It's from Emma's 4th birthday. The child is smiling, holding a balloon shaped like a princess crown. Rachel looks at it every night before lights out. A psychologist asked her once why she kept it. Because I need to remember, Rachel said. I need to remember what I took from the world, what I took from her. If I don't carry that, then her death means nothing. Does it help? The remembering? No, but I don't deserve for it to help. The house on Oakmont Drive sold 18 months after the murder. The new owners gutted the interior, changed the paint colors, replaced the carpets. But the neighbors still whisper about what happened there. Children on the street dare each other to touch the mailbox. The address has become a local landmark of tragedy. Emma's kindergarten classroom has a reading corner named in her memory. Mrs. Morrison retired the year after testifying at the trial. She couldn't continue teaching, she said, knowing she'd missed the one child who needed her most. The case changed protocols in Riverside County. Child Protective Services now requires more thorough follow-up on abuse reports. Teachers receive additional training on recognizing signs of parental mental illness. Pediatricians are encouraged to screen parents for depression and psychosis during well-child visits. Small changes. Incremental improvements. Never enough. Detective Angela Reyes left the force 3 years after the trial. She works now as an advocate for foster children. When asked about the Sullivan case, she's quiet for a long time before answering. We caught her, Reyes finally says. We built the case. We got a conviction. But we didn't save Emma. And that's what I think about. Not the trial. Not the sentence. But the fact that we were too late. That all our procedures and protocols and investigations came after a child was already dead. She pauses. Justice isn't what happens in a courtroom. Justice would have been Emma growing up. Anything else is just aftermath. In the years since the sentencing, Rachel has granted no interviews, written no memoirs. Her attorney says she spends her days in silence, working and reading and existing in a kind of self-imposed exile, even within prison walls. Some inmates know who she is, what she did. They keep their distance. Even in a place where everyone has committed crimes, there's a hierarchy of acceptable sins. Killing a child sits at the bottom. Rachel doesn't seek connection, doesn't want forgiveness. She serves her sentence not because the law requires it, but because some part of her believes she deserves this particular kind of death, slow, isolated, full of memory. A chaplain who speaks with her occasionally says Rachel talks about Emma as if she's still alive. She'll say things like Emma would be in 2nd grade now, or Emma would have loved that book, the chaplain explains. It's not denial. It's acknowledgement. She's tracking the life she stole, measuring the years against what should have been. Is that remorse? The interviewer asks. I think it's something beyond remorse. It's penance without end. The trial transcripts run to over 3,000 pages. Law students study them. Psychologists reference them. The case appears in textbooks about maternal filicide, about the intersection of mental illness and criminal law, about failures in child protective systems. Emma Sullivan has become a case study, a statistic, a cautionary tale. But she was a child who loved butterflies, who drew pictures of rainbows with careful concentration, who asked her teacher once why the sky was blue and listened with genuine wonder to the answer, who deserved to grow up. 5 years after the trial, a reporter asked David Sullivan if he thought justice had been served. He considered the question for a long time. "Justice would be my daughter being alive," he finally said. "What we got instead was accountability. Rachel will die in prison. She'll never hurt another child." And maybe that's all we can ask from a system that exists to respond to tragedy rather than prevent it. Do you think about her, Rachel? Sometimes. I try not to. Because when I think about her, I have to think about how I missed the signs too. How I left Emma with her. How I told myself I was doing everything I could when maybe I wasn't. So no, I don't think about Rachel. I think about Emma. And I think about how to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else's child. The foundation he started has grown. It operates in 3 states now. It lobbies for stronger child protection laws. It provides free mental health screening for at-risk parents. It trains first responders to look beyond surface appearances. It won't bring Emma back, but it's something. In her cell, Rachel writes letters she never sends. To Emma. Apologizing. Explaining. Trying to make sense of the senseless. "I can't tell you why," one letter reads. "I can't give you a reason that makes it okay. There isn't one. You were 5 years old. You deserved everything. And I took everything from you. I'm sorry. I'll be sorry until the day I die. And then I'll still be sorry." The letters fill notebooks. The notebooks stack in a box under her bed. No one will ever read them. Some crimes live beyond verdicts. A sentence can cage a body, but not the questions that remain. Why didn't anyone intervene sooner? How does a mother come to see her child as the enemy? What does justice mean when the damage can never be undone? Emma Grace Sullivan died on April 17th at the age of 5. Her mother will die in prison, decades from now, carrying the weight of that April night until her final breath. Between those 2 deaths lies an ocean of grief, guilt, and failure that touches everyone who knew them and many who didn't. The house has been repainted. The case files archived. The news cycle moved on. But some images remain. A 5-year-old girl in a bed, tucked in carefully, as if sleeping. A mother in handcuffs, face empty of everything except the dawning realization that she'd destroyed the one thing she was meant to protect. A courtroom where words like justice and guilty echoed, but nothing felt resolved. And maybe that's the truth that sits at the center of this story. That some acts break things beyond repair. That some crimes leave only fragments where wholeness used to be. That punishment doesn't erase what was done. It only marks the moment we acknowledge it. Rachel Sullivan will die in prison. Emma Sullivan is already dead. And the rest of us are left to ask, what could we have done differently? What should we have seen? When do we look away because it's easier than looking closer? There are no comfortable answers. Only the uncomfortable knowledge that this will happen again. That somewhere, right now, a child is suffering behind closed doors while adults debate whether there's enough evidence to intervene. While systems check boxes instead of protecting lives. While appearances matter more than reality. Emma's story ended in that lavender bedroom. But the lessons it carries don't end. They persist in the uncomfortable space between what we want to believe about mothers and what we know about human capacity for harm. Between the image we present and the truth we hide. Between the child who needed saving and the system that failed to save her. Sometimes the most haunting truth is not what was done, but what was ignored before it happened. And in that truth, we are all implicated. We are all standing outside that house on Oakmont Drive, seeing the perfect lawn and the cheerful photos, choosing to believe what's easier than confronting what might be real. Until it's too late. Until another mother calls 911. Until another child becomes a case file instead of a future. The courtroom is empty now. The judge has retired. The detectives have moved on to other cases. But somewhere in a prison cell, a woman stares at a photograph of a smiling child holding a balloon. And somewhere in a cemetery, a small headstone reads, Emma Grace Sullivan, beloved daughter, forever 5. The rest is silence.